All right, sit back, relax. It's time for another Laneway Talks.
Welcome back, everybody, to Laneway Talks with Rob and Vince, or Vince and Rob. How are you, Rob?
Oh, I'm good, thank you.
Well, we've got a few topics here to go over. Some of the things that you've mentioned to me, some of the topics that we mentioned last week. Vince's tips for keeping up with today's technology.
There you go.
Yeah, well, this is such a broad area, and what we mean to everybody, I wouldn't think we should do anything to do with sound recording. Let's do technology with social media. Yeah? What do you think? Okay. Because, recording is a whole different session on its own. Well, I don't know that we should even talk about heritage artists in that, just basically keeping up with technology, social media technology in general. So what we work with is we work with YouTube, we work with Meta, of course, and then that gets to Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and then you've got Threads and you've got Shorts in YouTube also. With YouTube, what you've got to do is you need to revolve around everything around your video. But remember, YouTube has become what they call community now, and you have a community post that you can do. And we try and do one of those every day. Yep. And that's essentially, I suppose, to combat up against Facebook, because that's basically what it is. So we discuss our albums. Now, a lot of these things are difficult to do, Rob, because if you're one artist, you have to think about, well, what will I come up with to put up and discuss? It's a lot easier for Laneway Music because we have 100 artists, so therefore, I'm doing a series on albums, which will last the whole year, quite frankly. And, you do an album each day. So I've just finished with X, and I'm about to start with Steve Lucas with his more solo material. And there's a lot of differences there too. When you get someone like Steve Lucas, he's with X where he's screaming, and it's that punk rock. And then you've got his personal solo material, which he, I suppose, does things like the Beatles and all that kind of stuff, that flavour. So this is a guy that has a Jekyll and Hyde kind of musical career in what he delivers. So when we get there, what's also needed now is that every time that you're doing a, let's call it a 16:9 video, so your widescreen video that you put up and make, you need to make a vertical video. And you can't really just convert it to a vertical, because if you, Rob, are not singing in the middle of the screen, we're going to lose you throughout the video. So there's going to be nothing there. You do have to think about all of those things. So, and that's quite complicated, because you've really got to get into video editing and do that. And what you can move the screen across and whatever, but it takes time, and then you've got a top and tail, black screens and audio at the top and the tail. So there's that part of it with YouTube. So then you've got YouTube Shorts, which are their vertical. Shorts to me are a competition with Instagram. You do get paid for them also, so it's well worth doing it if you get some traction. You're doing nothing more than 30 seconds worth maximum, and that is considered a short. So we've already covered quite a few things that you're doing just in YouTube. So let's just recap on that. So you've got your original video that you're making, let's call it widescreen, or 16:9. Then you're doing a vertical video. You're doing a 30-second vertical for shorts. You're doing community posts, and then you've got everything else in there if you're going to collect or put things together as playlists. And then there's in the back end, it's whether you're going to monetize that. And you probably, in the old days, you used to have more than 1,000 subscribers, but they've relinquished that and you don't need it. But you do need to be getting, I would suggest you need to be getting 10,000 streams a day to start making some decent money from it. But that's achievable.
So just on that note, what sort of act get that many streams? What sort of artists, what sort of people?
Well, we as a label get 25,000 a day.
But that's across everyone.
Yeah, that's right. But you remember, when you've got your YouTube channel, it doesn't just have to be about you, Rob. So it doesn't need to be all videos about, it's my latest video, but I don't have another video or another song coming out for 6 weeks or 2 months or 3 months. So it can be you can make videos on quite a few different things, or you can concentrate between your original releases and shorts. And so you're doing shorts every day to keep the momentum going in your YouTube and keep the interest going from your subscribers. Of course, everything revolves around being a subscriber. So you're trying to get people to subscribe because, it is a business at the end of the day for YouTube and for you also, because you want to make money out of it. So it's pushing subscriptions all the time. You've got to be very careful with that. We don't push it that hard. I think Dan, my other business partner, he does a lot of the back end on YouTube. So you can see how naive I am. I don't actually see all that stuff because my job is more the videos and delivery and quality and A&Ring it. He has a subscribe button at the end of the video that comes up, and that's about all that we do. We don't discuss it or we don't push it throughout the whole video. Now, that's a different thing for you and me here. We want people to subscribe and we want people to, obviously put us on their weekly listen list because we're conducting a business here like anything else. We would love to get a million streams a week, and that is, you're earning a living on that for both of us. So there's the intricacies and the back end of YouTube, the monetization and how you monetize it and how you set it up and what tags you put in there. And there's a lot there. If you're doing it properly, you can do it easy and just go, yeah. Or you can do it properly and then you can look at your analytics in there and they actually mean something to you. So that's YouTube. Then we go to Facebook. The one commonality two would be shorts and threads with Meta, but also the ability for now Facebook encouraging you to put videos up, and I mean the whole video, and they're monetizing that. Okay, so you can monetize it.
Is that a new thing? Or?
Yes, it is, and they're combating up against YouTube. So they're going back, well, we want videos too, which makes sense when you think about it, because why should Facebook not have videos? I don't see any reason why they shouldn't have videos on there. So we've started doing it. We probably don't do it every day, and we probably should, but we are doing it every couple of days, and we'll put a whole video up. There is a third one there, is that between the two, is that similarity is live videos. When you go live on Facebook and on YouTube, both platforms will open up the floodgates to you who own it, to an audience. So because they want people to go live, that's one of their big things, right? Now presume it is because, it gets people in there straight away, and it's new, it's different because it's something happening at that point. There's got to be bigger reasons in there, but they will open up your audience at a much greater rate when you therefore do a live video. So 2 weeks ago, I went to see, we have a band called Order of Decay, which goes back to Adelaide in the late 80s. And
when? What time was that?
Late 80s. And Kelly Hewson, who used to run his label, punk label, he was in Order of Decay. So he has a new band. He was in another band called Glenn and the Peanut Butter Men, which are full-on punks with the Mohegan haircuts and all that kind of stuff. And then,
Mohawk.
Yeah, Mohawk, right? But big, they're really in full colour and all that kind of stuff. He's now just formed a new band called Brando Rising. So I got invited to go down and have a look at the Last Chance Rock and Roll Bar, which is a great bar in town here. And I recorded it live. Within 2 days it had 2,000 views, and it's up to 3,500, 4,000 views now.
Right.
Once again, so we got the advantage of we went live, so that's really good for our Facebook channel or page, and then we get the advantage that Facebook like it that much, they'll push it more than they would any of your other posts, and we're up to like 4,000 views. Now, I could promote that, and I reckon I could get them 100,000 views. But I'm not prepared to do that yet with that because it was only a gig and the album's not out to next year, and I don't even know if we're getting it. But but the principles are there. So, but once you go to Facebook, then it's about it used to be about you could only do 3 posts a day maximum. I don't believe that's the case anymore. And now they've started the Meta Business Suite, which allows you to go in and do your post and automatically contour it or set it up for Instagram also and get it out to Instagram at the same time. Now, you used to be able to do it at one stage, but this has made it much simpler. So, but it is complicated when you go into the Meta Business Suite. It isn't. There's a lot of information there. I was doing some campaigns, and we do a lot of trials, Rob. So we know how to run campaigns and proper campaigns. But these platforms are coming out with boost campaigns where they say, look, just press the boost and we'll do it automatically for you and whatever. We don't believe it, but with AI and all this kind of stuff, I'm going to talk about that shortly. But you'd think that it might be a bit better. AI is causing really a lot of havoc. So, you go in there, and we did that, and we got really bad results. So what we do, and you might have seen this before, we've done it for Virgin Soldiers, we'll create what's called a smart card. And a smart card is just a little web page, which has different platforms on it that you can click on to listen to the track. And you can also put YouTube in there to watch the video. So that's what we got, a smart card. So we're trying to get people to click on that and then to watch the video. So
because that comes up in YouTube already, doesn't it? I've noticed that with Virgin Soldiers, just with our content.
Hold on, what are you saying? I don't understand that.
Well, that comes up when you go in to watch, say, a soldier's clip.
Yeah.
And then there'll be a line of other clips.
No. This is an actual web page. It's created.
Okay.
We do it called fanlink.to / in your case, it would be / Virgin Soldiers. So it creates a landing web page. Okay, so you can put it in and it becomes the button on your ad. And so if they click on the button to listen to or learn more, it then goes to that web page which says click on Deezer, Spotify, Apple or YouTube to listen to the song. Okay?
To listen to the songs, yeah.
All right. So that's what a smart card is. It's fairly difficult. We got really bad results on this. So we, as I said, tested it for the last week and a half. And we were just blowing money into the wind because it wasn't, I think we got 1,000 streams on YouTube. So there was no more streams happening there. And then I looked at the audio and we weren't getting any more streams on Spotify, which is, remember here, 70%. It's not so much overseas. Okay. And so, you got, we use Spotify because it represents 70% of the market here, but the results weren't there. So we had to terminate that straight away, and we tried it with another act and we got the same results. It wasn't giving us the results. So what it tells you straight away, their automated boosting is absolute rubbish. So that means you've got to drive it back to a very complicated campaign setup. It's really complicated. And when I say that, Rob, it takes time. You have to think. I can't be disturbed when I'm doing them for about an hour and a half, and you've got to go through a lot of pages and a lot of detail to set them up. Now, if we therefore go back, and then we've got threads, of course, which again are 30-second videos. We've got reels in Meta, which again are up to 30 seconds. So we've got Instagram and we've got TikTok. We've started doing TikTok again, and it's working.
Okay.
When you look at all of that, I mean, how would an artist, especially a heritage artist, but an artist, how do they get across all that? Now, a really well-organised bunch of guys or girls would, absolutely sort themselves out. And Rob, your job is, I don't know, Facebook. Vince, your job's YouTube. Someone else's job's something else. And you've got to be on that every day. So, of course I can do posts on them down at the gardens and having a picnic, or I could be in town or whatever. Doesn't have to be always music. But you need to be posting. So tips for keeping up with today's technology is that not only do you need to be doing it each day, those platforms which we're doing those campaigns on are changing at a rate of knots. So I come in one day and I go, where did that page go? And they've changed it and they don't tell you. And what they do also is they trial you. So if they've put in something new into Meta in the back end, not everybody's getting it. They will pick out people that are doing more campaigns than others and give them the beta to test, and other people aren't getting it. So it's as complicated as that, because then you can't ask people because they've got a different screen in front of them. And I've had this happen quite a lot of times. So it's a very complicated area. It takes a lot of effort. And I think, what do you think from a perspective of, having your PhD and all that kind of stuff? And, did any of this come up, or was this not a topic within that?
Not really in my research. It's an area of fascination for me, sure. But I'm still, my area of research is all pretty much pre this. But most of the artists that I've spoken to suffer from the same, they're not really fears, but it's so time-consuming having that. Because, you've mentioned here YouTube, Facebook, Meta Business, which is Instagram and Facebook, Smart Card,
TikTok,
automated boosting, and TikTok. There's 6 points that you've just mentioned that essentially even I have to go and research a lot of those, because I don't spend all day on social media, or even a couple of hours a day doing that is a big ask for, people are busy and have to prioritise how to make a living too, I suppose. But
and
this can be all part of it. But
go back to your seminar that you discussed last week, where it was discussed about how we have to educate the more mature heritage artist. These are the kinds of things that we need to educate them in, because I think you brought up here learning steps for heritage musicians.
Yes, of course.
And, it is heavy going. I don't find many that are prepared to do it. I really don't. Very few are prepared to do it. They just passed it and they don't want to waste the time doing it. But there are a few that will do it. Mike Rudd, for example, he does his posts on a semi-regular basis.
Yeah, he's really good at it.
So he's doing it, and it's a way of keeping up. It's hard to get across to them too. It's a way of keeping your fans up to date with what you're up to as a musician.
Yeah.
Because
absolutely.
In the old days we'd go down and buy Duke magazine, and that's how we kept up. Well, today it's through your Facebook posts or a few other different type of posts. So I think it's. And that's probably why I brought up last week too that I think it's near impossible to educate, we need to educate these heritage artists or more mature artists. Totally different for the younger artist and the middle-aged artist. But the older ones, I just can't see it ever happening. To stand up somewhere and say that's what we need to do, it's farcical. It's too heavy going. That's my opinion anyway.
Yeah, it is. It's a dilemma, really, in a certain way for heritage acts.
It's one thing to create the music, isn't it? And then get the next step going.
Well, it cuts into your creative passion. I think it's a completely different way of doing things as well. There's a couple of things I've been reading and researching this week. I think I mentioned to you about reading Richard Clapton's book, The Best Years of Our Lives. The last paragraph, the last chapter of that book is really addressing the substance of what music is like now compared to what it was like previously, and then, for me and a lot of artists, there's just this feeling that the creativity's just been completely sucked out of everything that we do through trying to deal with technology and just keep up with the nuts and bolts of, staying valid as a, musician and creative player these days. It's a very difficult thing to keep up with. It sucks the creativity out of it, I think. One
funny thing, I was watching the Andy Durant Memorial Concert, and I saw the song that Richard Clapton did in there, and I remember the story. I think Mal Eastick might have told me the story, and that they, tried to get him. He wouldn't come out of his hotel room because he was totally paranoid at the time. Then it was just hard enough getting him to the gig and to actually play the song. But when you listen to him playing, what an artist, eh?
I completely agree. I think, Richard Clapton's one of the greatest Australian artists, that we've had. But, he started in an era. Can I read something that he wrote in his book? Is that allowable?
Yeah.
Because he goes, here it's from page 318 of his book, The Best Years of Our Lives. I reckon that way back in the day, the late 60s, the Conservatives eyed off the anarchistic young rockers with utter contempt and fear. But the most successful bands of the day slowly moved out of the garage and eventually ended up filling stadiums. At this point, the corporations noticed the music industry growing exponentially into a business worth billions. I believe that corporations then became determined to grab a piece of this action for themselves. And as Richard says, by the time I entered the music industry, record companies were already noticeably influenced by their accountants. You can see the era that came through when it was basically unchallenged and people were creating wonderful new music. And Zappa talks about the same thing. I mean, I was listening to Dweezil Zappa's podcast yesterday, and he said that Frank Zappa fulfilled his record contract with Warner's and went in and said, you've signed me for, I don't know how many albums it is, but say 5 albums. And he goes, here they are. There's the 5 albums done. Thanks very much. And they went, no, you can't do that. And he said, well, I've done it. He said, well, no, you can't. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to finish your contract within, 6 months or whatever it was. And so they took him to court and he won. And then from that point on, I mean, that's being creative and getting the job done and having control over your work, which is what I think Richard's talking about there. But then the corporations went, hang on, we're on a good thing here, so we'll take over the power of it. And that's when the creativity, and that was, we're talking early 70s, mid-70s.
Well, I think that, if you go back to what you just said, that the accountants took over back then, well, it was far worse back then than it is now to structure a deal. I know Australian acts were on 3.5% of wholesale, not retail, wholesale.
Yeah.
And wholesale is a completely subjective figure when you come to music, because it's what that record company makes it by sneaking in all kinds of things, charges into, or, discounts. So, 3.5% back in the late 60s, early 70s, 71, 72, and 73 it starts to delineate a bit and it gets a bit more professional, is just horrendous. I mean, how you could ever, as an artist, earn a living, it would have been by playing live, but you were going to make nothing from selling your records. You just couldn't, not at 3.5%. Now, then it went to, we used to then later in the 80s would do deals at 12% of wholesale or 18%, but they'd be on a 3 to 5 year album deal. Again, you're locked in for the rest of your career, really, unless you become a Prince or someone. So, once again, you're right. I think they took over as a business and they chew artists up and spit them out. There's no doubt about it. And it's only the few that survive. And then the ones that do survive, we're only discussing this last night at a party. There's a lot of musos. And we were talking about how you just get chewed up and spat out and you just become crazy anyway. If you do make it to the top, you're a nutcase because you have to, because you've got to try and handle it all. And there's so much going on. I was watching yesterday a show, Van Halen show from 1986 maybe, with Sammy Hagar singing. And I was looking at
Live Without a Net.
It might have been that, or was it another one where they
recorded the happy pants on?
He had the happy pants on, yeah.
Yeah, that's Live Without a Net.
Yeah, because they did two shows and then they intertwined it into one video.
Yeah.
And I was watching that and they were just so good. And then I thought they didn't talk in the end, did they? Eddie Van Halen and Sammy Hagar.
I don't know if they did.
I don't think they were friends in the end because Eddie had gone nuts. So getting to the top and then being able to stay at the top and then being able to deal with it all, Sammy Hagar must be one of the, because he's gone through rehab and everything, and he must be one of the lucky ones. And there's a few lucky ones that keep it together. He's in his 70s. But a lot of them, it's just so difficult. So it's a churn and burn, really. And it's when I say to people, it's a real tough industry. That's why I say it's a tough industry, because to survive in this business, you have to be politically savvy and you got to be like a rat in a shithouse, darting around to try and protect yourself and stay relevant. Because that's the other fact of all this is staying relevant. So how many bands do you know, Rob? And surely you would have covered this because you covered pub rock. How many bands sound as good today as they did the day they recorded? I'll use Buster Brown for one. I think they sound just as good today as they did back in the day. Right? Okay. But then there's others where it's just completely dated, especially the glam or the, synthesizer.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of look at the Angels. I think the doc years of the Angels, as much as towards the end of Doc being in the Angels was difficult from what I've read from Bob Yates's book. I don't think you can match the power that they had in that era, the Doc era of the Angels. The band was just phenomenal. And I know the Brewster brothers have got, worked really, really hard keeping all that together. But I still don't think it's, for me, when I listen to the albums and even the later albums, which are quite a few, it doesn't really seem like the same thing.
We did the Howling album. When I got to Mushroom, I think it was later that year, we released Howling, and, we just couldn't believe the success that we had. I mean, every song, I think we might have ended up having 5 singles of it. And they were all crackers, but the whole album was a fantastic album. I mean, it was just, mate, how does a band go from being really good to just phenomenal? And that was it there. Howling, I thought, brought them to another stratosphere.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we played with them back in the 80s. We opened for them at a couple of shows, and I saw them quite a few times. And they were just a force to be reckoned with, and they were true pub rock. I mean, AC/DC sort of left in Australia and handed them the baton and went, you guys, it's all yours. I mean, there was a conversation between Angus and Doc. I think that there's something to that effect where, we've left Australia open, you guys just take over. And they did, and I don't think there's really been, other than Midnight Oil, a band that's matched that. Chisel.
Look, I think they within pub rock they definitely owned it, but that was to their detriment too, Rob, because they weren't able to go to the next level. So they weren't a band that could do Rod Laver Arena with 10,000 people. I don't know whether I'd agree with you there. They didn't do those shows. I mean,
but look at Narara,
okay, but that's a festival. It's a festival. You can't put a festival in, so you've got to look at, say, Jimmy, who can do a Rod Laver or do the old entertainment centre. Same for Ivor Davies and Icehouse. For some reason, the Angels could never move up to that bigger level. I don't know why. I mean, they just couldn't do it. Anyway.
It was a different era.
Could have been.
And different types of bands, like there's stadium bands and there's pub bands, I suppose.
But would you see Cold Chisel as anything but a pub rock band?
Well, they were.
I thought they were quintessential, a pub rock band.
But I saw them here when Prestwich wasn't actually playing with them.
Yeah.
They had Ray Arnott playing with them, and it just didn't have the fire. And they changed players. I mean, there's vital elements to bands, and I think it happened. You were talking about Van Halen before. I really think that nothing really matched. I mean, no detriment to Sammy Hagar, but the Roth era of Van Halen is just unstoppable. It might not be as popular or didn't sell as many records, but I don't really think that's the issue. It's just, there was a certain symbiote unit that worked for that band, and it was for the Angels with Doc, and I think there was for Chisel with Steve Prestwich. There's just that combination of elements. You can't substitute something in there.
Well, let's move on to, what's your book really about? Now, what's that?
Which book?
You wrote it, didn't you? You said, what's my book really about? So what's your book about?
You mentioned last week you wanted to talk about my tutor book.
Yeah, let's start with that.
What I was doing, I was teaching in school for, 15 years, secondary school. And I was lugging a big pile of books each week to take like a couple of pages out of syncopation, a couple of pages out of stick control, rhythm section drumming by Frank Corniola. So essentially what I did was went back to when I first learnt and had a look at the fundamental structure of tutor books, like a music book that you learn from.
Yeah.
And the drum one was the first one I had was Gene Krupa's book, which was from 1935.
Yeah, yes, I have that book. Book.
Drum method. And I went, what's unique about this book and what does it share? So I wanted to analyse that, and I did it in my study when I was doing my undergraduate study at University in Music Education. I pulled out 14 key elements, that's what I call them, in Krupa's book. When I listed them all, I went, every section of the book has a key element and then it moves on to the next one. So I went, well, okay, that's a really good structure. And there was a couple of other books around that time. I mean, Stick Control was a little bit more by George Markstone,
I
a
had
little
that
bit
one.
more
Yeah, I had that
about
too.
sticking.
Yep.
Syncopation by Ted Reed came a little bit later on.
Mm-hmm.
But Krupa had already covered those elements. And I went, okay, so who was really the originator? That was the most popular book at that time. There was a premier book that they did in England as well, which was similar and came out at the same time as the Krupa book. But I think the Krupa book had a bigger scope. So those 14 key elements, I went, right, bang, start off with how to hold the stick, how to read music, fundamentals of music. And that's what I've done in my book. I've just followed those 14 key elements based on what Krupa's book was about. And I just adapted all the modern tutor books that I've studied from and taught from and put them in a condensed version in my book. And then what I've done, I created a website that a student, because most of the students would go home, I said, have you practiced? And they, 90% of them would go, nah.
Yeah.
Why not? I didn't know what I was doing. I couldn't understand it, or didn't have anything to play along with. So I created the website. So you go home after your lesson, you can go to the website, you can log in, and you can click on the lesson, and there it is in front of you. And it's got an audio file, and it's got a video file, and it's got the PDF of the lesson that we covered that day. And then you can go click, and you can run through it. So
did you see any real upshot in your students in their technique and playing once you started all of that?
About only a small percentage.
Yep.
And that's really made me think about the motivational aspect of what we were doing, which was tricky because all great artists, I think, and all great players have this intrinsic motivation to want to be able to practice for work, whether you're a writer, whether you're a musician. Just motivating students. They had so many distractions. They were playing sport or other extracurricular activities, and it made me delve into it further. And why aren't they following up? Put all this work in. How come they're not following the instructions? Because they're so distracted by so many things. And it was only a small percentage that actually would complete their lessons each week and then come back and move on to the next lesson. So to get through the book, I've sort of done it in a foundational element. So there's a bunch of students that would have completed that, and then they move into the next element, which is intermediate, which is when you take all the tools and everything you've learned and you start creating songs and playing along with songs. Because you need those fundamentals, I think, to be able to understand what you're doing.
Did you find that help when they were?
Yeah, once they got to that stage, there was a little bit more interest. But I also mentioned, and Krupa says the same thing. It's about playing along with music of popular bands of the day. I mean, back then it was Benny Goodman. Today it can be Slipknot.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I mean, the essence is the same. If you're passionate about a band that you like and you want to work out what they're doing, you're going to sit in a room for hours and just work out whatever licks they are, whether it's Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, Slipknot, or the Foo Fighters.
When you mention someone like Slipknot, when I was watching Van Halen yesterday, what do you think of his brother on drums?
Alex Van Halen?
Yeah.
I think he's the greatest drummer on the planet.
Really? Okay.
He's one of the most underrated, but him and Eddie are a symbiont unit, they're so locked in together, and they make everything that looks so simple, and they put it in a 3.5-minute song, and it's just brilliant the way it's done. I think musically, Van Halen are untouchable. I don't think there's ever been a band on the planet that's anywhere near that level, but to be able to do it in a popular musical manner and establish in a 3.5-minute song and get their point across. And David Lee Roth's a major element of that too.
Well, that's interesting. What we should do, we should always bring up an album then, or an artist every session we have together. So, for example, what springs to mind for me at the moment would be Paul Kozoff. Okay, so. Do you know who Paul Kozoff is?
Yeah, from Bad Company, Free.
Yeah, from Free, not Bad Company, from Free. Had a lot of drug issues and died very early at the age of 26.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Kozoff.
And a unique style. Now, when we look at Paul Kozoff playing and then we look at Simon Kirke playing, was it Simon Kirke with Free and then Bad Company? Yeah, he was in
Bad
both,
Company,
wasn't he? Yeah, he was in Free also. If you look at him, I was watching him in an older video a week or so ago, on an old DVD I got, and there's nothing extraordinary about his playing. I don't think so anyway. But when you put it together,
I think there is.
See, that's interesting. That's what I would like to. I kind of go, oh yeah, he's nothing special about him, but it works. and it works really well with Paul Kossoff on guitar, and that really laid-back style that Paul Kossoff had. And Free weren't really a hard rock band; they were just a blues, rhythm and blues band. And I just find he just sits back in the beat, and he doesn't do anything super complicated, and it works. Then you got Paul Kossoff, who does very laid-back lead breaks. They're long, they're sustained. I find listening to Paul Kossoff today is as good as the day, I was introduced to them in the 70s. And I just kind of go, wow, imagine what he would have become. Of course, I love Bad Company, what Paul Rogers went on to do. I love Bad Company. But then I love that first Foreigner album, that very first one. I just love that record. I mean, those songs are just unbelievable. But again...
Yeah, I saw Foreigner in 78 here at Festival Theatre, and Chisel opened for them. And I love Foreigner at that stage. And they had the two drummer thing going on, which was really, interesting for a young drummer to see. But Chisel blew them off the stage.
Okay. Yeah.
And I felt bad for Foreigner because everyone was booing them when they came out. I mean, about 2 or 3 songs in, I think that whole mindset changed. But, Chisel got an encore, and once he came back on and did Georgia, it's like, how do you top that with a homegrown audience? It's just amazing. Two really different types of bands, but Australian audiences didn't really go with the pomp of the Yank acts either. So
I wouldn't have thought they were the right match either, quite frankly.
No, but it was at WEA, I suppose. The ones that
would have been
done that, or Frontier or whatever. But it was just interesting to see.
There was no Frontier back then, but anyway,
it wasn't back then.
It would have been one of the older promoters. But again, we know that. I try and say to artists all the time, don't even bother doing, because there's this thing about, I'll do the gig because I'm getting in front of an audience. Well, if it's the wrong audience, you're wasting your bloody time.
But it's like coming back to Van Halen. I mean, they opened for Sabbath, and then they were just blowing Sabbath off stage every night. And they actually stopped doing it for the sake of, Sabbath
I was never
not getting trashed.
I was never a huge Black Sabbath fan after Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. There was maybe one more album there, which I didn't mind. But
yeah, I mean, I like Sabotage, and I like Technical Ecstasy. I love too, because they were working with Rick Wakeman at that stage, so there was a bit of a crossover with technology.
But I mean, I found that they just got a bit later on, a bit lazy, and it's just all about noise, and there wasn't any. When Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, it's got everything. I mean, it's got the rhythm section happening. It's got the drumming happening. It's got the riffs.
I think Bill Ward's another underrated. He's just such a great free drummer. Got a very musical approach to what he does.
Absolutely.
More, I mean, it's compositional, but it's more in a classical sense than it is in a blues or a jazz sense. Or, but he's very jazz influenced as well. So there's so much swing in Sabbath and in the playing of that music. Which is like Prestwich from Chisel, and it's the same with Alex Van Halen, which and it even comes back to Free. They've got that swing, they've got that sit, and it feels good when you listen to it.
An album I want you to listen to between now and next week is an Italian band called PFM, and the live album specifically called Cook. Okay, so it's PFM, and the album is called Cook. It's live, and I'll ask you some questions about that, just, on Spotify or wherever you listen.
Okay.
And I say, because the drummer there is just phenomenal.
What's his name?
Mate, I couldn't even tell you because it's one of those Italian names. It's, as long as...
I mean, these European bands, I've been over there a few times, and it's like, it's a whole other level.
They're not a jazz rock band. They're a fusion rock band, and but the drumming is just sensational. And the different styles is what kills me when I'm listening to all these different artists and the different styles that come out. That's why I asked you about Van Halen, because I was looking at him yesterday and I thought, well, he doesn't do fast rolls and all that. Well, he didn't look like he was doing them there.
Alex?
Yeah, he was more about using the whole kit and going right around the kit.
Depends depends what album you listen to.
Yeah, well, it could be. And, and I thought he was hanging back behind the beat, just laid back, and it just gave the rhythm section.
Yeah, but they push and pull it so well, and they come in a 16th note earlier, a 16th late, or an 8th note earlier, an 8th note late, and they're just so onto it that you don't notice it. It sounds simple, but you go and try and play along to it, and it's just virtually impossible to get those changes. They're just otherworldly, those two guys.
Well, I brought up Paul Kozoff, so who are you going to bring up?
Well, as in drummer?
No, as a musician. You could be a drummer, or it could be a bass player, or it could be a guitarist. But for me, I've gone back to, I got for a Christmas present for my wife, Geddy Lee from Rush's book, My Effing Life, which is a great read. And I've kind of started reading that because I think I can't go past Rush as well, and Neil Peart, and I've gone back. I've got everything that Neil's released and published book-wise and written, and going back to reading that. He's just so eloquent. And have you got the DVD,
clever.
the Neil Peart DVD?
I've got everything.
Everything? Yeah, we released it at Liberator many years ago. I've got it and I've never opened it. It's sitting there, shrink wrapped.
A work in progress?
I'll get it out and I'll find out for next.
I think when I was at your place, you showed it to me.
Yeah, never opened.
I mean, I've got it all when it came out. When I was working at Brash's, we had a sheet music department, and I hunted high and low through every distributor that I could find just to get any publications that Rush had out, and same with Zappa stuff as well.
I mean, on that note, what do you think of Fly By Night as an album?
I think it's great for the time. If you have a look at the year and the time, and the transition from the first album after Rutsy, and then Neil comes in and is just all over it. He's doing everything that you want to be able to play but can't.
I was amazed when I bought it, at the time. Probably very much like second Montrose album, Paper Money. So I felt that you had the first Montrose album, which was really hard, and it's kind of considered the quintessential rock album of all time, with some of its foundations. But Paper Money became a much more, more polished, a lot more laid back. And then I thought the same thing between Rush's first album and Fly By Night. And I thought the first one was a bit rough and harder. And then Fly By Night was a lot more polished and had a lot more colour and depth to it.
That's Neil's influence.
I mean, then those next 2 or 3 albums after that were just killers. 2112,
Caressive Steel.
Oh, fantastic.
But the record labels hated that apparently. And
really?
That tour they were doing, they got put on with lower level acts. They were touring, I think, with Nugent, who was, not really the level that he was at a couple of years before with the Gonzo Double Live, and Rush were doing that. And they were just going, this is pretty much the Down the Tubes tour, I think they called it. Then the record company said, we need something with hits and, we need singles. And they went in and they went, and recorded 2112.
Yeah, fantastic record.
And I know, but side two's like, side one isn't it? There's 2112. It's one theme song on the whole side. And the record company going, what? And then it exploded because it's brilliant.
Yeah.
And I put up the 2112 day last week, which is the 21st of December in Australia. We used to celebrate that with my drum tech and best friend, every year. And you play 2112 on 2112, and that was back in the 80s. And I see that through social media, a lot of people in the Northern Hemisphere have acknowledged it as a day for us in the Southern Hemisphere because our dates are different. So
we used to listen to All the World's a Stage. Just that triple album was just unbelievable. That's what we'd go and sit down on a Saturday afternoon and listen to. Yeah,
it's frighteningly good.
Yeah,
and lyrically, I still think it's very relevant to today.
Yeah.
Like all great writers. I mean, Neil wrote great content, and he was passionate about being able to play drums in that sense of being a good lyricist and being a good compositional writer, be able to structure his drumming, because words and drumming had the same sort of rhythm.
So did he write most of the lyrics, did he?
Yeah, all of them.
Oh, really? Neil Peart?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I didn't know that. I mean, I think I might have said last week I don't really listen to the lyrics. I listen to the vocal.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that statement you said. I went... Quite a bold statement.
I listen to the vocal, not the lyric itself.
Because I think the message. Well, I mean, I listen to a lot of music that has, I think, a good songwriting component in it, whether it be Richie Clapton or whether it be, Neil Peart.
Well, the message for me, Rob, is the music itself, which the vocal is part of the music. That's the message to me. The message isn't what's in the lyric and is it trying to tell a story or give us a message on life or something. I'm not interested. I'm interested in...
Yeah, but I think that's the element of the song is telling the story in a musical sense.
Yeah.
That's how I imagine it. So.
Yeah, but that to me, and that's how I see it, but I don't listen to the lyric. Very rare that I listen to the lyric and get anything out of it at all. It's, to me, the blending of the music with the lyrics that's giving me the story of the song. So,
okay.
That's how I see it, and I don't ever get too hooked up in the actual lyric. Interestingly, that you had to think about it, and I thought that's a bit weird, but
Yeah, it's not weird. I mean, everyone's different. It's just I found it challenging to try and understand how you perceive all that. So
yeah, well,
trying to work it out. I don't think
I mean,
I need to sit down and listen to an album with you. I think in the same room over a glass of red and go,
yeah,
all right, tell me what you're hearing.
Yeah. Well, I do look. I do look for those hooks too. I look for a very catchy hook in a song. It's very much for me. I look for the hook in there that I go, wow, that puts the, shivers up your spine. It's not a lot of songs can do that. I'm looking for that in a lyric that blends into that. Again, a very difficult thing to do. It's not an easy thing, but...
Yeah, I mean, when we were writing all the Soldiers material and we were rehearsing, I just remember Gibbs sitting in the corner poring over lyrics and writing, and and he had to get the right lyric and the right line for every verse, every chorus and everything. We worked so hard at making it all fit together and over again. It's just, we went to great pains to make sure that our music was like that. And so when I listen to the lyrics, I know what Gibbs talking about within the song, but I know how hard he worked to make all those words work.
So when are we going to hear some new music from you?
Well, as I said, I've still got plenty there.
I know you got plenty there. That's why I'm going to keep pressing it every week. When are we going to hear some new music from you?
Yeah, I'm just keeping you hungry for it. And we can keep talking about it.
I thought you'd gotten a few guys that you thought in Adelaide that, you could work with and do it. And
I have, yeah. No, that conversation, I had that conversation with Gib last week again. So, it's still going on.
Well, I got, there's a new Deep South song coming out, which is just being finished as we speak. There's a new Radio KSG song, which is happening. That's slowing down a bit, that project though. And that's happening. And we've just started a new project with Simon Chainsaw. And
Simon Chainsaw.
Yeah. Or do you remember the Vanilla Chainsaws?
I do.
Yeah. Well, this is Simon Chainsaw is the singer from the Vanilla Chainsaws, right? So he's got about 10 or 15 albums out through us. And
that's phenomenal.
Yeah. There's a lot of records there. And we've partnered up with him. So we've just finished a track there, very much kind of Cruelly Sea kind of song. And so I've got quite a lot coming out. And as I often say to people who are listening, it's about collabing and collaborating and getting our artists to collaborate and to continue putting out new music because, we're getting older and older and the time just slips away. And then, it just gets to a point where I find some of our artists...
As Max Merritt said, hey?
Yeah, they just don't do it. And it's like you got the opportunity to do it now. So if you've got any creative in you, well... don't hold back, put it out, and that's why I keep hounding you.
I've got way too much.
And your drumming talent needs to be explored. I mean, there's so much you could do, whether it be the band revolves around the drumming or something like that, because, you've got the talent there to do it. So why not?
Oh, thanks.
Why not explore that? And,
well, I have.
Well, you may have, but that's for you, but not for me because I haven't heard any of it. And neither is anybody else, mate.
I'll get to it. Well, maybe I should listen to the album, the EP, and the new Laneway album.
Yeah, well, I think if you start and you get a song done with a bunch of guys, I think it rolls on because you've been re-releasing older stuff. I'm really hanging out to get some new stuff from you That's why I'll keep hanging it on you to go, well, when are we getting some new material? So, but, if you've got the guys available to do it, do it, and do it now. A couple of the guys have been on tour, so it's trying to get the same people all in the same room. Interesting about that. So you go get them in the same room, whereas I'm working with people from all around the world, and none of us are in the same room. Now,
and you're doing it all online. Yeah. I get that.
Now, it can be difficult because, there is no doubt about supergroups when they get together, not to wear any supergroups, but when you hear a supergroup, it usually doesn't sound too good because you can tell that they're not a cohesive unit and they've been playing together for a long time, and therefore, what's that Sammy Hagar Chicken Foot? Chicken Foot?
They're sensational.
Yeah, look, I put it out, right, when I'd Liberated, but maybe sensational as musicians. I didn't think there was any sensational songs. There was one or two. Because I felt...
Really?
Yeah, I felt that you could feel the songs weren't cohesive. These guys hadn't been playing together all the time for 10 years or whatever it may be. So it can be difficult, this is my opinion, when, you got people in Spain or in the UK or in Sydney, and then it all comes together. So you don't get what you were talking about, get some guys into a room. And you can get a completely different feel. But it does give you the freedom to work with many people and many different styles, And
because Satriani, who's the guitar player from Chicken Foot,
that's right.
Chad Smith, who's the drummer from the Chili's, and Michael Anthony is just
fantastic.
has the most incredible voice and fantastic bass player.
Yeah,
and Sammy's a brilliant guitarist in his own right and an incredible singer.
Absolutely, but I must say, Chicken Foot didn't take off. I didn't sell a lot of DVDs. That tells you the story.
I think Learning to Fall is an incredible track off that album, and so is My Kind of Girl.
There was one or two songs there which were really good, but the rest of them to me were just a bunch of guys who are really good musos playing. That's how I hear it, and the public didn't buy it either because they weren't a hit.
Yeah, I don't know whether... Yeah,
Well, they weren't a hit, that's for sure, because they would have continued it on in a big way.
Yeah, but, Sammy doesn't play down at Cabo Wapa. That's always packed out. You can't even get into those gigs, so...
But that's him. Yeah, that's him. He can do gigs. Hold on a minute.
Yeah, and he's playing with Jason Bonham. And...
Yeah, he can do gigs. He can continue to do gigs anytime he wants. But with these kind of super groups, a different thing altogether. Yeah. Very few. Remember the Power Station or the Firm with David Bowie? Remember the Firm?
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
that was another classic. That was another classic, which was really ordinary.
But I don't know whether it's psychologically. I'll go out on a limb and say psychologically you're dealing with, a preconceived idea of, Page is Led Zeppelin and, Chad Smith is the Chili Peppers and Sammy Hagar is Montrose. There's a lot of people trying to get through the psychology of what are they doing to it? They're messing with the vision that they had of the band that they liked in the first place. So that maybe it's why a lot of people don't like what's coming out because they're expecting. So,
I think I brought it up last week, a new playlist called Deep South Blues with a Twist. And I encourage everybody to have a listen to that. And I've been listening to it all week. There's some crazy stuff in there. Yeah, there's some crazy stuff in there of people I've never heard of, Rob. I just kind of go, what? Where did these guys come from? And you read a bit about them, and who they are and where they're from. But... I just kind of go, wow, it's so exciting when I discover something like that because I didn't know any of them. I discovered them, starting that playlist, which I've got to start adding a few more to. But it just blew me away and I was so excited going, wow, these bands are fantastic and they're so different too, in their own little way. And so it gives me so much confidence that we've got so much more coming, and happening out there. But they're not, because we have 100,000 songs a day released or whatever it may be, these things get, they just get lost in the wash.
That's another thing that Clapton refers to in his book, how there's too much content and there's not enough listeners anymore. And I thought that was really, really poignant.
But how do you say that? There's too much content.
I'm not paraphrasing there. It's just my version of what I read in saying, but it's like there's so much music out there and he questions whether there's as many listeners out there now as there is music. And I think that was a really interesting thing to ponder.
Well, I reckon there's more listeners out there now, but what we've got to be careful about is the intergenerational tagging by artists like that who are not going to get a young audience. So, and what we do know from statistics, Rob, and I wonder whether you got this when you did your PhD, because I got this from my close radio compatriots. They know between the ages of 17 and 23, you will develop your artists and sounds that you like that will endure you for the rest of your life. So, if I, between the ages of 17 and 23, got into Fleetwood Mac are my, or Led Zeppelin, they are my benchmark for the rest of my life, and I go, oh, yeah, mate, nothing's like as good as them, this is just trash.
Oh, I don't think it is.
And that's statistical. They found that out statistically, that between those ages, people formulate their music style and their likes. And that will endure them for the rest of their life. So trying to change them at the age of 40, you're not going to do it. And that is a real radio thing. And they've done a lot of studies on this.
That's probably great data. But, I'd like to, I suppose there's an argument against that, whether that even is true. But
well,
because, you're coming from radio stations that want to promote what they want to promote, which is...
Well, they want you to listen, there's no doubt. They want you to listen.
Or play some decent music.
They want to advertise. See, and we've got to be careful. You've got to be very careful how you say that because, play some decent music, that goes to the core of what they're saying. If the next generation of 17 to 23s have developed their style, or their bands that they like, and then the next generation, because we've had another 3 or 4 between there since when I started. And so, when you say that, you're feeding straight into that category. Oh, they play some decent music. What do you consider decent music? Oh, Led Zeppelin, or, I don't know, Van Halen. Well, my kids don't even know who Van Halen is. They don't know who it is, who the band is.
Mm.
You've got to be very careful. You've got to be very careful how you say that and go, well, hold on, radio wants you to listen because they want to advertise on there. And that's what's changing, and that's when preferences for music are formulated in the mind of the human being. Very interesting.
Yeah, I'm just a little bit of Richard Clapton's brilliance here. He goes, for about the past 20 years, now this is written in 2015, so it'll be 30 years now, but for about the past 20 years, music has lapsed into a homogenised and rather uninteresting state because the system that dictates that we will and what we will and won't hear is based on false principles. Pop music is fine unless it's taken too seriously, but it's about as satisfying as a Big Mac. It's okay while you're eating it, but it has no lasting nutritional value and therefore is ultimately unsatisfying. And you feel like something afterwards. This probably explains why many reunion tours by pop stars of the past fail. I think that kind of sums it up because there just doesn't seem to be a lot of decent content in...
I just can't agree with you on that. Is that...
I
can't agree with that. It's just if, I don't know, I suppose if I talk about my daughter, she's out there singing some song I've never heard about, right? It doesn't sound too good to me, Rob, all right? I don't like the song because it's one of those nothing songs. And she is singing to the song word for word. And I've said this occasionally to her, how do you know the words of that awful song? She goes, it's not an awful song, Dad. And so that's getting to the crux of what I'm saying is they value a different style. And you and Richard Clapton going, well, is it good music or whatever? Well, mate, that's because they don't think your music's any good, Richard, because... you had your big hits in the 70s, and they don't value that style. They value I call it the throwaway style of the 2000s, right? Those songs.
Yeah, but that's what it is. That's the point that he's making. It is throwaway. There's no depth to it. As he said here, I need the challenge and stimulation of my peer at pushing the envelope and coming from left of centre with bold new ideas that challenge the boundaries of music. That's a great principle to live by, I think. And just today, evidence.
I try and be more subjective in that. Yeah, I look at my little thing here, and I got Backstreet Crawler in there, which is Paul Kossoff. Craig Horn and the Hornets, and these kind of bands in there. I know that they're just not going to resonate with I suppose, young female audience or whatever. Even some of the young male audience, it's just too bluesy, too rocky, everything about it. Narrowing into that audience and pulling away from what society has conditioned these kids into listening to and what is good. So let's say, I don't know, I might use Celine Dion, but she's too old now. But there's these new artists who there doesn't seem to be any structure in the song. It's just a song, and they're singing it, and it's a number one smash with 26 million streams. I mean, I cannot.
Yeah, but that's the commercial consumerist end of it, isn't it?
Well, it is. I find it so difficult to connect.
The Big Mac of music.
Yeah, I find it so difficult to connect with and to see the value in the song and how it got 26 million streams. I find it really difficult. And these are the things I look at each day with everything we do in music here, and trying to, go, well, I mean, we've got one band, Sideshow Annie, we were looking at it the other day and suddenly they had, 8,000 streams on a song. But what had happened was the Spotify algorithmic playlist had pushed it and suddenly it had gotten, 8,000 streams. And I'm trying to dig down. I go, well, who's the audience here? I couldn't get it, This is what they don't give you, Rob. You were
saying that last week.
You can't get, it gets to a point, they go, well, it's the Spotify algorithmic playlist. Then they'll give you some age brackets and stuff. But I need to know specifically where and how. And you can't get it, because if you could directly go to those people. It is so difficult and it's really frustrating. But there are more things to delve into to help people. I think we probably should spend a session on Spotify for Artists and look in there, go through it, kind of explore what the artist needs to, get out of it. And again, I go through that and I find it complicated. There's, some people go, it's not a lot, but there is a lot in there. And you've got to try and make heads or tails. Then you've got to try and take that back to campaigns in Meta or YouTube or Google and utilise that data. That's really hard, Rob, really difficult. You'd virtually need spreadsheets and you need to be cross-correlating your data and going, right, it's like trying to go, well, my song is very much like the Hoodoo Gurus. Well, when I go to Google and I say match it to anything that people that like Hoodoo Gurus aren't big enough. It doesn't come up with them. If I put Eric Clapton in, it comes up.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the nature of how culturally it's so out of touch, because, in Australian culture, Hoodoo Gurus are, huge, but you're watering down Australian culture by making it international in a sense of the search bot. And that's, because of that's isolationism.
And they would have that data that you could go, no, just give me Hoodoo Gurus in Australia, right? And it would come up very high, but they don't allow you to do that, right?
Yeah, but see, that's denying cultural significance. I think that's a really dangerous pathway to go down. I don't know whether you saw the Australian business page today. There's an article by Jared Lynch called Act Now on AI's Threat to Creativity, which...
Is this in the Australian?
Today, yeah.
Okay, no, because I read the Australian back to back.
Yeah, it's in the
seen that one.
Business section. And it's basically federal government is treating reining in big tech and artificial intelligence like a low priority, threatening to damage society by abolishing any incentive to produce art and other creative content, former competition watchdog chair Rod Sims warned. So even that byline, from the title, it's like, that's a concern. And then you go forward and you're bringing this up, and it's Google.
Well, the AI in Google and Meta is just running havoc at the moment.
Yeah, but apparently it's not regulated in Australia, whereas it's regulated in Europe and it's regulated in the UK. They're trying to introduce legislation here, but the Australian government doesn't really want to
I find
give it a high priority.
I find all governments here complete lack, whether it be Labor or Liberal, forget all the minus parties, Labor or Liberal, is their lack of public service and serving us, the public. It doesn't exist.
Which is what they're employed to do.
Yeah. I just find, they all pander to their particular groups, whether it be Labor with the unions or the Liberals, as they used to kind of say, I suppose they'd say
Or they're pandering to
business.
Google.
Yeah, or whatever. But, where's the public service? And getting right back to how you just started that, how come they're not legislating on that? And really helping us to get ahead. And everything is about, oh no, we need to decentralise. All we do is we sit here and talk, but we don't actually run any of that. It's a concern for the future. There's no doubt about it.
I think so. Yeah, but even coming back to your point about when you're searching hoodoo gurus, I mean, culturally, that's really important Australian culture that I think we're losing contact with. Like when I talk about Richard Clapton, we've talked about the Angels, we've talked about Cold Chisel. They're major players, and if you did the same thing and search that on an international level, they're probably not. But culturally in Australia, they're huge. So I don't really want us to lose.
I saw Joe Camilleri and the Black Sorrows. Their big hit, whatever it was called, I was looking at it the other day because we had Jeff Burston here, and it had turned over 26.5 million streams.
Yep.
That one song. The amount of money in that is phenomenal. It depends whether he had a deal, I think they were with EMI at the time. It's whether they had a deal where this has all come back to them and whatever. But 26.5 million streams is worth huge money, all right? Don't believe anything with Taylor Swift and everybody else. So, it's huge bucks. And so that, to me, if that's achievable, I should be able to put him, Joe Camilleri, in the Black Sorrows, and it should come up and say, yes, I can tag those people and, and I can try and advertise to them. But as you just said, very difficult because we're on the world stage now and they mean nothing on the world stage. Right? Yeah. Anyway, that's enough for today.
Sorry, my dog's starting to freak out because the thunder's happening here now.
That's all right. Yeah, we had it the other day. All right, well, we'll get together next week. Good talking to you again, Rob.
Yeah, you too, Vince. Thank you very much.
Mate. I think I'll pick out a few of my vinyls out of my collection and talk to you about a few of those next week, all right?
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, mate.
Look forward to it.
See ya.
Okay.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.
If you enjoyed that, there's more. Just search Laneway Talks for more great conversations.